Listen, thank you very much for coming along today to the very first Play Blackpool talk of 2022. It's good to be back again. My name is Alan Stewart, aka Mamemeister on YouTube. So yeah, I'm delighted to be along today. Stop going to Stewart. So I'm just going to crack right on. Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, I want to welcome you to Play Blackpool and to our first panel of the day. Before I kick off, can I ask for a show of hands anyone who owned a Commodore Amiga, an NES, Sega Mega Drive? There we go. Or if you're really spoiled, a Neo Geo? Anyone? Hey! I bet you had lots of friends. And secondly, can I ask all these guys that put their hand up, who thinks that these are redundant systems lost in the mists of time? You've just lost my punchline. Think again. Anyway, guys, listen, I am delighted to welcome you to Play Blackpool. 4 people who are continuing to not only support these systems, amongst others, but knock out a quality of software we thought simply impossible back in the day. So please put your hands together for Mr. Graham Cowie, Geezer Games, Ali Lowtek Software, Daniel Crocker, and Mike Tucker of Bitmap. Okay guys, just to kick things off, thanks very much for taking time to join us today. Could I ask you all just very briefly to give a little bit of an introduction and a flavour to what your background is?
Definitely technical issues here, isn't there? Yeah, so I'm Graham Cowie. I've got, I suppose, like a little development studio at Geezer Games. I make games for the Commodore Amiga. I've been doing it about for 5 years now. Started off with doing ports, but I've got a new game just about to be released, Devil's Temple. It's a bit of a take on Kung Fu Master. And yeah, I love the platform, I love making games, and yeah, that's me.
Hi, my name is Daniel Crocker. I'm from Wave Game Studios. We primarily seem to be publishing Dreamcast games at the moment. That's mainly because it was my favourite system, and a bunch of my friends make games for the Dreamcast, and I figured, you know, it would be nice to be able to help get those games out to a wider audience and, you know, get them to the people that really want to play them. And that's pretty much it.
Ali Lowe, or Alistair, short name for Ali. I work in game dev like full time. I used to do mobile stuff for Ninja Kiwis. I worked on balloons and stuff, and then kind of quit during COVID to do retro stuff because I was really bored of my job and I like old retro stuff. And the technology was there for an artist such as myself to kind of do that now.
Hey everyone, I'm Mike Tucker. I've been in the industry since '95, so 27 years now. Getting on a bit. Yeah, I formed Bitmap Bureau about 7 years ago with my colleague Matt Cope, and we've been making games for the Mega Drive, Dreamcast, Neo Geo. Got other platforms lined up, but yeah, Xeno Crisis was our first retro release, and recently we released Final Fantasy on modern platforms, so that's also coming to Neo Geo shortly. And yeah, we have a great time doing what we're doing, and yeah, we hope you guys enjoy what we're doing too.
Thanks guys. So can I ask you, what was your kind of first foray into video games? Was it Space Invaders? Was it Pong? If you're an old bloke like me. And did you get much exposure to the arcades back in the day? Yeah.
Well, yeah, I suppose around about 13, I was sort of like, my grandparents lived next to the seaside in Sunderland. And they had, like, you know, like most seaside towns, they had sort of like arcades there, and that was really my exposure to it. Really, you know, just going to my grandparents every sort of chance I could get, really. But most of the time on the weekends, you know, my mum would ship us off to my grandparents, and I'd then just walk down to the arcades, and I'd just be there all day, you know, just playing, you know, all the games I loved, you know, like Bomb Jack and Rygar, and then later on, likes of Outrun, those types of games, and yeah, it was just a great time to be able to be around the arcades. Really, I miss them.
Me too. My first introduction to gaming was a little bit unusual for my age. I'm in my early 30s. My first gaming system, if you can call it that, was the BBC Micro. It was my older cousin, who's about 10 years older, he had it, and he handed it down to me, and he was like, yeah, you've got to make games because there aren't any included. So, made some games, played them, copied a bunch out of various manuals and whatnot, magazines, and then finally got into the sort of 16-bit Mega Drive Super Nintendo era about 10 years after those came out. So I've always been late to the party, and that's why I think we're sort of starting to get into the Dreamcast now, 20 years after its demise. As for arcades, unfortunately, they, by the time I came along, they weren't really what they used to be. Luckily, that's changing now. Plenty of awesome places like Arcade Club, and there's a few here as well.
Cool, yeah, so I'm like, was born 91, so same age as Sonic. So similar to Dan, didn't grow up with the arcades the way that people remember from the 80s. And I just remember them being very expensive compared to what you could do at home. Because I liked the NES, and I had a Amiga and had BBC Micros and stuff at school. But the NES was the one that I really liked because they were just simple games, but you could have big adventures with them. And I'm also really dyslexic, so there wasn't much reading in any of the NES games, which I like as a thing. And then like game development stuff, I found the Games Factory. That's kind of how I got into game development in the first place. Like found it in a bargain bin at Toys R Us. All these things that don't exist anymore. But
I was quite lucky that when I was growing up, it was the 80s and 90s, the golden era of the arcades, I'd say. And my first arcade memory was, I think it was a fish and chip shop in Cornwall, where they had Xevious and Nemesis lined up next to each other, so that just got me hooked on video games and shoot-em-ups especially. And then at school I grew up on the council estate, so there was various kids who had various computers. Someone had a ZX Spectrum, someone had a Commodore 64, then there was some posh kid with a BBC Micro as well, so we used to go around each other's houses and just exchange games and play games, and it was great times really. And I spent a lot of time in the arcades in the 90s in particular, playing Street Fighter. Crank beat me on Street Fighter yesterday, so obviously I'm not that good anymore. But yeah, I got very hooked on racing games as well, like Ridge Racer, Daytona, Initial D, Sega Rally, and I still collect arcade boards and cabs now. Luckily we've got a warehouse to put them in. But yeah, it's a very difficult hobby to get into with the expense and the space that you need.
Can I ask you guys, why would you code for old systems when you've got like power behemoths like the PC, PlayStation 5, if you can get one obviously, Xbox? What is the appeal of programming for extremely limited, technically, hardware? What is the appeal?
I think I just love it too much. I think with the modern platforms, you've sort of like lost that boundary of what's possible with like making games. And I look at like PS5 games now and go like, that could all be real, in a few years' time. Where with the likes of when you had a Spectrum or an Amiga, you knew what the limitations were of the game, and you sort of appreciated that. So when you're seeing games, when they came out on the Amiga, like the likes of Shadow of the Beast, you knew that was just going to blow people's minds, really, and people appreciated that. Certainly for me, I appreciated that technical limitation that the programmers had done, and that's the appeal for me. I like working under those limitations, because I think for people in the community, they appreciate what can be done with the platform. It has limitations, but I think that's good.
Good answer. It's hard to quantify for me. because the Dreamcast is my chosen system, and whilst I do program, I haven't personally been involved in the programming of any of the games that we've published. They've all been programmed by friends of mine. So I can't really answer in the same way, but I can answer why we chose the Dreamcast. There's a couple of reasons. One is that it's my favourite system. It's the system that I was the most excited about when it first sort of was being advertised. I wasn't able to afford it at the time, being from a family that couldn't justify such things. But when I did finally get it, it was kind of for the homebrew scene. It was for the indie games that were coming out pretty thick and fast around, say, the mid-2000s, sort of like 2005, 2006. And I made a lot of friends online who were making these games, and the common complaint was, we're making these games and most people that play them are really happy with them, but not enough people know about them. And we just really want to get that, information out there that these exist and that you can play them and that they're worth your time, essentially. So that's kind of how I got into it. Not from a programming background, but from I guess you could say marketing, but it doesn't sound as genuine as I really want it to sound. It's because I really want these games out there and I want people to play them, and that's why we're here today showing them all off. You can play them all. If there's any games that we have that are not on display, we'll happily put them on as well. It's just about getting it out there.
Questions? Why are we doing this? Yeah. Okay. A few reasons. One, I was like really poor and stuff, just going around car boots and like collecting, picking up games. So I had a big bunch of retro stuff, like before it was cool in the mainstream. And then I always wanted to make games for that, as we kind of all did, dreamed about making games. Then did get did games at university and stuff. And in like 2008 maybe, someone told me about D-Pad Hero, and I was like, wow, someone's made a new game for the NES, and that was, I think, the first time I'd ever heard of a new thing for an old console. And then me and my mate, he had like a bunch of like Sega dev kits and stuff, and like, well, that's cool. So we made a couple like prototypes. I was just lucky that my flatmates were into that stuff as well. And then it was years later when NES Maker came out, that thing like got onto it and stuff. But I suppose the reason that I do the old stuff is like it is a niche, and if you're doing something like Kickstarter, like it's more likely to get funded than a game for a new system, because there's a group of people that will buy basically everything that comes out, whether it's good or not. Luckily, I think my games are actually good, but yeah, that's how I do it.
Yeah, so for me, I think from the PS3 era onwards, I kind of lost interest in consoles, and they're essentially just PCs in different shaped boxes. And I think when you look back at a Mega Drive game or a PlayStation 1 game or a Commodore 64 game, you can look at a screenshot, you know exactly which system it is. Even from the soundtrack, you know what game the platform was on. So the Mega Drive in particular has a real aesthetic to it with its 9-bit palettes and the FM sound chip. It was the machine that I got most attached to as a kid when I got it as a 13-year-old. So it was actually, I think Matt Phillips really, he made this game called Tanglewood using he wrote that himself, but it was, there's a system called the SGDK which allows you to quite easily develop games, well I wouldn't say easily, but it gives you a nice head start with making games for the Mega Drive. So that was the reason we wanted to have a go at making a Mega Drive game, and we teamed up with Henk Nieborg, the legendary Amiga pixel artist, and this crazy Swedish guy called Daniel Barlin, otherwise known as Savage Regime. And we all got together and we just wanted to make the best Mega Drive game we could in 32 megabits, and I think we did a pretty good job. But it's fun working with those restrictions. And actually, I think if you're developing a game for a modern system, there's no restrictions at all in terms of memory or CPU or colours. So I think working on like the NES, for example, or the Mega Drive, it helps you hone in on things like tile sizes, sprite sizes. So I see it as a positive thing, and they're a real joy to work on.
I thought of another thing, another reason why I'm doing this stuff. Again, because I'm really cheap, that I never had a good enough PC to run anything that would run on the new stuff. So I built stuff that run from my piece of shit PC. Sorry for not swear. So that how I did like the low poly like stuff for modern games, and then mobile was at the stage when I joined the industry that it was kind of that kind of like between PS1 and PS2 like low poly thing, and I really got good at optimizing that, and it's kind of moved on, and I kind of miss those days where they didn't have as much power.
I think what you guys kind of touched on, the beauty of like old games. I mean, nowadays you load up a game in the PlayStation 5 and everything is just laid out for you. It's almost like an interactive movie. But back then you had to visualise. In fact, I was listening to a podcast actually, and they were talking to a guy who worked for Bally Midway, and he did all the side art, and he said it was his job to actually convince the consumer that what they were playing was actually, you were playing as a space alien trying to shoot, whereas the reality was you were playing as a block, hitting another block up the screen sort of thing. But that's, you know, and nowadays I think you've lost that. It's just, your eyes glaze over. So what challenges do you guys have when you're programming for sort of like limited hardware, and how many people generally involved in pulling a game together? You might pass it on.
Mix it up,
Use I get the mic quicker.
So yeah, generally our teams are about 3 or 4 people, and our games take about 18 months, 2 years. So yeah, Xeno Crisis we had Hector Borg, Catherine Menabde doing cutscenes, Savage Regime on audio, myself and Matt on programming. So yeah, quite a small team really. But we're finding now that the game's getting bigger and more complex, and we're having to hire more people. So it's getting expensive, and each game becomes more of a gamble, of course. So what was the question?
What challenges do you find programming, and how many in a team? So.
Yeah, so challenge-wise, it's more about pushing everything to the screen in time. So you've got a split second to push all the tiles and sprites into the right bit of memory. And yeah, on the Mega Drive you get, Matt's going to kill me if I get this wrong, I think it's like 80 sprites, I think, which are 16 by 16 tiles, or no, 8 by 8 tiles, I think. And yeah, you have to make sure you don't have too many per line, for example, otherwise you get flicker, which I quite like actually. It's a nice characteristics of old consoles. Yeah, the Neo Geo doesn't have quite the same issues, but there are still restrictions. Interestingly, you can't scale upwards on the Neo Geo, you can only scale down. So, and you can't rotate either. So yeah, I think yeah, if you look at the snares, you know, they can do rotation and full transparency. Each console's got its own little foibles and traits and characteristics. So it all. Yeah, an interesting challenge to work with. I'm sure same about the NES.
Yeah. No, exactly the same thing. You said a lot of stuff really good, but on the NES it's a bit weird because like people keep inventing like new mapper boards, which have like new capabilities that the old ones didn't. So you can have more colors or like CD audio on an NES cartridge. And like, how does this work? And there's a part of me that's like, oh, that's really cool, and then there's a part of me that's like, but I kind of just wanted to be a bit more faithful, but they're all really exciting. Yeah, I do enjoy the limitation of it. As an artist, I kind of say it's like if you're working with cheap oil pastels on a canvas, on a bit of paper, you know when you're done because it just doesn't take anymore. Like you throw stuff at it, like it stops running, or like you've run out of colours or pixels or whatever. You know, it's done. The memory's gone. I like that as a good stopping point because on the new consoles you'd be like, oh, we can just add more polish here, more polish, and the polished stage of games is what I absolutely hate. I like doing like dirty prototypes and then like, getting it out as quick as possible, just making it fun.
Most Dreamcast games that we've worked on, they've been developed, all the graphics have been done, and all the audio, everything has been done pretty much by one person. And I think that, in most cases, how a lot of these games are made, right? It's one person with a passion and a lot of time. And you know, a lot of the time they take years to make, but that's a good thing, because it means a lot of care and attention has been put into it. On the Dreamcast side, I can't really talk about the programming too much, not being a Dreamcast programmer myself. I'm the production, the PR, the manufacturing, all that stuff, that's me. But the biggest limitation with the Dreamcast is the fact that if you was to code for it with no sort of SDK, it would be incredibly difficult. And I don't think I've ever heard of anyone doing that. I mean, I'm sure someone could correct me if anyone has, but I don't know of anyone that's done that. And obviously, for fairly obvious reasons, you can't use the Sega SDK. They frown down upon that. So you have to rely on someone else or yourself building, essentially, a software developer's kit from scratch for that. And that's the biggest difficulty there.
Yeah, we rely on the community a lot. Yes, yeah, we're at a good stage.
Yeah, on the Amiga, very similar sorts of things. But what I'd expand on the Amiga platform, it's changed hands quite a lot of times, and you know that you've had, from a programmer's perspective, doing assembler, you get quite a lot of certainly at the minute where we're testing the game. You know, there's hardware expansions that have been effectively bolted onto the Amiga, and you'll find that your game won't work. So it's doing that testing against all those different you know, add-ons effectively, and just trying to find the line of right what's enough testing that's enough before you release the game. I think the other thing with the Amiga as well, and I don't know whether it's like this on the Dreamcast and the Neo Geo and the Mega Drive, but there's a fine balance between CPU and memory. You can get that trade-off. So if you, for example, if you want to use like interleave blitz on the Amiga, you know you can get a bit of faster CPU, but you're chewing up memory. So it's coding these for these old systems. It's all about certainly for me, it's all about the trade-off of what you do. But I think one of the things that's massively improved, and you know it's just which way it is that we've just got much better tools than we did, you know, back in the day. You know, there's some awesome tools to help you get into making games, and it's just much faster. You know, like the WinUAE or the emulation, that type of thing. It just makes things miles easier to develop games.
I did actually prepare some footage of these guys' games, but we don't have a laptop to run. But we will when Chris sorts us out. Thanks very much. Question in particular for you, Graham. Most of your recent games have all been arcade conversions of Bomb Jack, Super Sprint, Rygar, and most recently a Kung Fu Master meets Vigilante game called Devil's Temple. Why the Amiga, and what factors led to you picking these particular games? Were these particularly favourites that you played in the chip shop? Or?
Yeah, pretty much. I was at the arcade club last night, and I pretty much just made a beeline for Bomb Jack, because that's what I used to play. When, you know, as I mentioned earlier, when I used to go to the arcades in Seaburn and Sunderland, you know, I'd spend a lot of those big 10 pences on Bomb Jack, and you know get a decent score. And I think with Rygar, what it was that it might have just been a timing thing, but I remember that coming into the arcade at the time, and there was nothing else quite like it. That game has like beautiful parallax scrolling, and I don't recall seeing any other game like it at the time. I've not actually looked on, you know, the main database and went through the games, but you know, I remember seeing it and thought that looks absolutely an awesome game, and it was just sort of like I kind of just loved it which way it looks. It was a brutally hard game. You know, you put 10 pence in, and you know, me as like a 13, 14-year-old, I wouldn't last very long. But I did see somebody. You know, when the arcades, you know, you get a crowd around you, so you thought, oh, something's going on. And I watched some guy complete the game, like all 27 levels, and you were able to see beyond the demonstration, the attract mode of the game, and like see all of those like levels. And I think that's part of the reason I chose it. But I chose it also because you know, the year 1200 I knew probably could do it at the time as well. I'm going to be honest about Super Sprint. It was more of a case I'm just absolutely crap at maths, and I just wanted to get better at maths. and so I thought I'll do a bit of a challenge and just see if I can just learn a bit more about, you know, cosine, sine, and trigonometry, that type of thing. And it just sort of like it turned out into a game. But you know, I'm better for it. I do know a bit of maths now. It's odd because, you know, I can, you know, you see the Amiga scene's like well renowned for the demo scene, absolutely brilliant. And you know, if you were to ask us to code like a spinning cube or something, or like a G-lens vector or something like that, I couldn't do it. But if you ask me to code a game, I can. And you know, Devil's Temple, it started out as a port of Kung Fu Master. You know, one of the challenges that you have, well, certainly that I've had, is that, you know, it's hard to get a graphics artist to kind of commit to say, right, I'm going to draw you a whole new set of tiles, a whole new set of sprites, for a game that you haven't really coded yet. Unless you've kind of got that back catalogue of sort of like, well, you've done an arcade port of Bombjack, you've done an arcade port of Rygar, and then and then I'd started on Kung Fu Master doing that one, and then I had like a guy come to us, you know, he's from Canada, brilliant pixel artist, Tenshu, absolutely loves the Neo Geo, by the way. So, and he says, can I just redo the tiles for you and redo the graphics for the game, and you know, make it look much better. And you know, within probably a week, you know, he came back with like the first level of the game, and I was just blown away. And I says, yeah, let's make the game, but not make the Kung Fu Master. And he had, you know, a lot of influence. I'd never really played Vigilante, but he had at Blackpool played a lot of Kung Fu Master. I remember it sort of like in the arcade, being stood next to R-Type and Nemesis. So, you know, I can almost picture it. So that was the reason, really. We just wanted to make an improved version of Kung Fu Master with a touch of Vigilante. So that's why it's got the, you know, the likes of the knives and the nunchucks and stuff like that included in the game. Yeah.
Well, I was lucky enough, I was down at NERC a couple of months ago, sitting with yourself, and I was playing Devil's Temple, and a couple of guys says, "What, is that an arcade game? What's that on, mate?" And I'm like, "Amiga 1200. But no way, I mean, it'll blow your socks off. It's so good. One for you, Michael. Xenocrisis is obviously heavily inspired by Robotron, with a side selling of Smash TV, garnished with a drizzling of Alien Syndrome. Would I be right in thinking that this genre was a particular favourite of yours? And can I also ask, what challenges did you have converting this game to run on, I think, was it Switch, Neo Geo, Mega Drive, etc., etc.?
Yeah, so I was a fan of Smash TV and Berserk, Robotron and Alien Syndrome, and yeah, also Mercs and Shock Troopers. So yeah, we noticed that the Mega Drive didn't really have a great arena shooter. The Smash TV conversion for Mega Drive was a bit weak, we thought. So we came up with a control scheme which we thought would work on the 3-button pad and also the 6-button pad. And yeah, we threw in Aliens aesthetic, and the game was born pretty much. You know, it kind of wrote itself. So it wasn't too difficult a game to make, to be honest. Weren't too many challenges. I think the biggest challenge is probably getting the controllers working on a 3-button Mega Drive pad. But yeah, converting to Neo Geo, it was the same resolution. Neo Geo can handle more colours, of course, so the art ported up across nicely. And then, yeah, getting onto Switch. Yeah, we did have to have two different code bases actually. So we had like a retro code base in C and assembler, and then a modern code base which is written in Hax. So our Hax engine actually ties in with Unity. That lets us spit out to PlayStation 4, Switch, and so on. So yeah, it's a fairly easy process, but we want to move away from having two code bases because yeah, if you find a bug in one code base, you might have to go and fix it in the other one, and it's just awkward. So yeah, moving forward, we just have one code base that spits out to every platform you can think of, pretty much, and yeah, a few more. There you go.
Same question to yourself, Ali. Obviously, you release games, I believe, on NES, Sega Dreamcast, Steam, and the Switch. Same question to yourself. What do you find? Do you have any particular issues when you can code it for different systems, or can you write for one platform? And is there some piece of kind of technical wizardry that automatically ports it?
Well, say I used like NES Maker and stuff for Flea, and then we did Tapeworm and C. So Tapeworm's easier to port to other things without emulation, and then everywhere else we basically emulate. Like the reason it's on Dreamcast is because I remember, like on the bus home from school, my mate gave me a CD with a bunch of NES games on it. It was just an emulator, and I was like, that exists and that's open source. Can we modify that so that we can make it like a commercial product later on? And I know some cool Cody friends that are doing Dreamcast stuff, and he made that work. So that's how that did it. And then getting over to Switch and Xbox and PlayStation, all that stuff, that was again just emulation, open source emulator through a third party place, so I didn't have to touch it. I'm not the best coder, and I definitely could have did that without relying on other people. I think. That's the question? Yeah. Was there another bit of the question?
No, that was it. Piece of cake or what? Daniel, am I right in thinking that your sole, obviously you publish games, is it just for the Sega Dreamcast? And again, what I think you've touched on it, what was your
Currently.
So you're looking to branch out?
We are looking to branch out. Dreamcast has been awesome, it's my favourite system. We're not going to stop supporting the Dreamcast, we're going to keep going. I think we've got 4/5 ready for next year already. But we want to put some original Game Boy games out. There's a lot going on in that scene, as Bang in the front row will be able to attest to. A lot more than people realise, actually. Same goes for the Dreamcast, actually. I'd say there's probably 20 to 30 games every year which are being put out. Not all getting commercial releases, but there's a lot happening. We've been working on some Playdate stuff as well. I think Alistair has too. Really, really cool system which not many people have yet, but
What's it called, sorry?
Playdate. It's like yeah, Alistair's got one.
You want to see it come by the booth?
Yeah. It's, I kind of see it almost as like a modern version of the original Game Boy. It's got a black and white screen, it's got A and B and a D-pad, and that's it. And a crank, which you...
And a gyroscope and a microphone.
Okay, yeah, so it's got a bunch of extra stuff. But if you can make a Game Boy game, you can make a Playdate game.
So can I ask you lads, did any of you guys code as a professional basis, or, because let's be honest, you're coding at a rather more mature age. Is this your first foray into coding? You don't have to answer that if you don't want to. That'll slap you again,
Sort of. So back when I left school, I had aspirations to be a games developer, and there was a software house, Zeppelin Games, at the time where I live, and when I left school, the government had like a YTS scheme, and I got like a placement on a YTS. I think it was $29.50 a week. I think if you got through that, you win like the £35 a week. So I went into this like tech placement, and you know that I was telling I forget who it was to say, oh, can you get me some placements into games companies? And so I ended up at Zeppelin Games, and they were paying me $29.50 at the time. And the guy who was leading, he says, right, you just sit in the corner. And I says, right, I program like Amiga games. And he says, well, there's a Commodore 64. Just start programming that and make me a Kung Fu game. And I was like, right, okay. So. And bear in mind, I wasn't very good at actually programming, and I didn't have the resilience or the determination, I guess, at that young age either. So about 3 months went past, and I tried my best to learn 6502, and he came in, had a look at the code, and he thought, yeah, I'll extend you for another 3 months, because he obviously wasn't paying any decent wage for us, so he sort of like he could do that, but. after the 6 months, he had a look, and the game was really bad, by the way, when I finished it on the C64. He said, "Oh, yeah, you're pretty good, but you know, we've got to let you go," type of thing. And that was kind of in the sort of like area where I had to get a job at. I needed some money, so I ended up going into general IT. But that's really the only time that I've worked in the games industry. And to be fair, I don't know what it's like now. I would imagine it's a lot better now. But it was like a room, just a small room with like developers all like packed in. And what was strange was like at sort of like lunchtime, they'd all sort of like pack up like D-Paint and stop what they were doing coding, and then pull out sort of like pirated versions of like Sensible Soccer and start playing that for an hour. It was so weird, and then then they'd start back off again. But yeah, I was a bit gutted I didn't get to carry on, but it ended up all right. I'm making games now, which is good.
In short, no. I've never been paid for my code, for good reason. I've been a web developer for 10 years, so that world is familiar to me, but yeah, as far as programming commercially for video games, no, not at all.
Yeah, again, I'm more of an artist, so not so much in the coding. I code enough that I'm dangerous. I can prototype pretty good, but like then a coder comes along and is like, "Do you only know Fs?" I'm like, yes. Just F coding, yeah. So yeah, I've been learning a lot more on the Blade. I'm really enjoying that at the moment. But yeah, all the old stuff is way over my head, and yeah, anything too complex is not. What was the question again? Have I been paid for it? Technically, I wrote the camera scrolling system for the game Red Rain on Apple Arcade because I was over in a different studio in New Zealand, and they were like, "Can you do that?" I was like, "They don't usually trust me with code in the Dundee office, but I'll try." And I did make it to the game, which is good. But I also did have a big bug that crashed, so they fixed one of the lines. But yeah, I was paid as an artist for many years in the industry.
Yeah, so I started as a QA tester at 19, back in 95, working for SCI. I managed to get into level design. Then I got headhunted and went to IMO. We were called IO Productions, actually, based in Eastleigh. We were making a sheet coding game for the Dreamcast. So I was helping out on the design on that. And that was due to be published by Infogrames. They put about £1 million into it, but the project fell apart when it was about 90% done, so it's a bit going. So the studio went into mobile games. So we're making the very first mobile games for Nokia and Sony Ericsson, Orange, people like that. And yeah, they got me making some games in Perl, just like simple menu-driven games. And then that led to Java, so I was able to do actual real-time arcade action where you could sort of run and jump and stuff. And yeah, that led into Flash eventually, so we were making some Flash games for people like Adult Swim and Namco. And then eventually, yeah, we made a Steam game with Adult Swim, so that was still in Flash. And yeah, from Flash, I've gone into Hacks, which is yeah, it's a nice transition really. And so yeah, I don't really class myself as a good programmer, but I'm more of a designer programmer. But yeah, you can say I've been programming for 24 years, I guess. Yeah, I must be doing something right, but yeah, I'm not the best. But luckily I work with some very clever people who do all the difficult stuff for me.
Obviously, you code for kind of old systems. Do you think you'll ever branch into modern systems at all, or are you quite happy to stick with old systems? And would you look at ZX81 possibly converting Xenogenesis to that? That'll test your coding skills.
Want me to go first?
Yeah, go for it. Yeah.
Short answer: no. Not really got any interest in the modern systems. Yeah. it's like I said earlier, I don't know where the boundary is, and I like those technical limitations really, of working on the older systems. Later on I might dabble in the C64 and finish that Kung Fu game. Apart from that, short answer no.
Yes, to a degree. There's a bunch of games that we've put out that people are now asking for like modern versions of, which will essentially just be ports or likely not emulation. It will have to be ports, but that would be the only involvement that I can see us having with the modern systems. Basically putting modern retro games onto new systems.
Yeah, I do really like the kind of cutting edge stuff, but I really don't like photorealism for the fact that I don't think we're actually there yet, and I don't want to deal with it until it's actually there. And then when it is there, I think it'll be really boring, so I'm not interested. So I really like artistic type games and stuff, like artistic rendering, like non-photorealistic stuff. And the power that we've got to do cool shader graphs and stuff is really good right now. So yeah, I think I would like to do more of that stuff. But again, the retro thing is like a good niche to kind of like get your name known, and then I'm kind of scaling up from there. I won't forget about the retro, I definitely won't, I do love it. But yeah, I do like the modern stuff.
Yeah, so we're putting all of our titles onto modern platforms still, and we'll continue to do that. I think a great game is a great game irrespective of the platform really. So you make a great NES or Mega Drive game, people will still want to play it on the Switch or PS5 or whatever. One avenue we won't be going down is probably VR or NFTs or crypto or any of that stuff. So we just want to keep it very old school. But so yeah, I think we'll continue supporting whatever comes next. As long as you can push buttons and make things happen on the screen, that's all we need.
I've got tons more questions, but we're kind of running out of time, and I want to open the floor for any questions. One last one from me, guys. Modern games require literally hundreds of hours of investment of your time, and you need the dexterity of an ambidextrous octopus to control most games. Do you think that the simplicity of these games is like a huge appeal to modern gamers? I know it's for me.
Yeah, I think so. I think I like games I can just pick up and play, like from the arcades, just pick them up, have a game, and then get back to what I was doing. Saying that, the boy likes Fortnite, so I've started playing Fortnite. But yeah, I like just the simplistic element of the games.
So, what's the question?
Yeah, do you think that the fact that
the fact that these are sort of
simpler to play, there's no thousands of buttons, do you think that's what appeals? Why do you think people want to
I think
play?
it depends on the gamer, doesn't it? I mean, you've got people that are really into like MMO RPGs, for example. They're not going to like what we do, but those that grew up with these type of games generally they're going to, especially as a lot of them are influenced by popular games at the time, some of which never got home ports. That's kind of it's kind of the genesis of some of these games is there was no home version of a particular arcade game, so someone decided to make it. We've been to a few events like Play, which are more aimed at the modern crowd. We definitely don't do as well. So from that perspective, they're looking for flash, they're looking for the magic and sparkle, which I think that we do get from retro, but those particular people, it's just not for them.
Yeah, I really do like the simplicity of the old systems. Like the NES controller in my mind is like the best controller ever. You've got two buttons and a D-pad. And I think it's generational as well, because people that grew up our age, if they weren't playing games, they kind of didn't get used to that right analog stick. And we take it for granted that like everybody just knows how to do that. But there's so many people that have been like alienated because they've been told there's like crap in COD or whatever, and they just put that away and then they play Candy Crush rather than that. But they don't see themselves as a gamer because of that. But I think that the modern generation growing up have kind of got that dexterity in the right hand. And like maybe in dyspraxic, I found it really, really hard to get used to that. I absolutely hated those games for a long time myself. But became standardised around the 360 era, where like this is how you do camera controls, and then that was when I actually was like, cool, I don't need to relearn this for every game. But yeah, the simplicity is really good to go back to, and children that haven't got to the stage of using the dual analog sticks have really like connected with the old NES games. I've heard a few people in the crowd said that to me. The 4-year-old is playing like Tapeworm and they're loving it. They're like, yeah, it's really cool to see.
Yeah, I mean, for me the appeal is just being able to turn on the console and just immediately start playing the game. When I had my PS3, every time I turn it on, there'd be a system update, or the controller wasn't charged, or the game needed to update. And yeah, if you've got just like half an hour or an hour, as a lot of us do, just to play a game, it's you know, that's your whole session gone. So yeah, I think it's great that you can just slap a game in and just play it, and you know you've got the whole game there as well. There's no DLC or microtransactions. So yeah, I'm all for it, and hopefully there's still an audience for it for a few more years yet.
Okay guys, I'm just going to open up to the floor. The wonderful Colin is going to be running about with the microphone. Just raise your hand. All of a sudden I've got another microphone, so you'll need to be vigilant, Colin.
Hi. So, apart from the games that you guys have all made, what kind of recommendations would you give to people who want to get into homebrew? Like, what are some of your favourite games that you've played for various retro systems? Is that a tough question?
Do you mean from like a technical perspective, so you want to get into programming, or?
Yeah, from both perspectives, programming or for people who want to play the games, what's a good one to get into to look at homebrew and
Right. I mean, from a technical perspective, I mean, there's loads of tutorial stuff. You know, if you want to get into Amiga stuff, my channel has some tutorials to get into programming. Gives you like a baseline to get into. And to be fair, the program, you know, if you put coding games to the Amiga and assembler, it's quite difficult at first, but once you get over that, it's quite, you know, well, certainly for me, you can kind of push on. Is that okay?
For the Dreamcast, there's a really great engine which is open source, which I'd recommend checking out. It's called Simulant. There's a Discord as well. It makes developing for Dreamcast a lot easier. I know Dreamcast isn't going to be for everyone, but if that's something that anyone's interested, that's the way to go. So were you looking for recommendations of sort of homebrew games, essentially? But not,
games as well.
Okay, well, obviously all of ours.
Apart from what you've done.
Xenocrisis is my personal favourite, and that's genuine. It's not just because he's here.
Cream of the crop, like.
It's absolutely amazing. Yes, there you go.
And you can buy it on everything.
Yeah, it's on every platform. It's you know, it's a hard question because basically every game that I find that I like, I approach them and say, can I publish this please? So we've either published it or we're going to publish it. Yeah, I'll just say Xenocrisis for now.
Just like that,
Micromages is one I really like. That was the other one that was like, that was the big resurgence in the NES homebrew scene, I think. And then from Dungeons and Doom Nights, that was really good as well. It came out recently. Slow Mo is really, really hard. So that plays in my heart, much like Flea. And yeah, use stuff like NES Maker, GB Studio. GB Studio is getting so much better because it's open source. I wish NES Maker would go that way because it's got a horrible clunky interface. It's just really hard. Yeah, what else? Nebs and Debs. Listen to the homebrew, the NES Assembly podcast if you want to see homebrew stuff. Or Retro Break channel as well.
I quite enjoy NG Dev Team's output. Yeah, they make some very polished Neo Geo stuff. Matt Phillips is Tanglewood is excellent too. That's worth a look. yeah, micromages, yeah, great stuff. And yeah, I mean, Intrepid Izzy looks cool.
Yeah.
So, my daughter's called Izzy as well, so that helps. There's so much great homebrew stuff coming up on so many platforms now. And yeah, the NG dev team stuff, yeah, playing on Neo Geo is very expensive, so probably not the best recommendation, but you can check them out on YouTube. It's probably the best way to look at their stuff.
Good point about NG Dev Team, by the way. They make Dreamcast stuff as well. And I think it's pretty much straight ports, so they're great too.
I'll just share that there.
Just a quick shout on the Amiga as well. There's a good engine that's being developed by A-Rock called Scorpion Engine. Really easy to get into making games. There's been some good games come out using that engine. So look that one up, Scorpion Engine.
Do you want us to show your question or actually that's all right?
I was just going to say, if you want to play your games and you don't have the hardware, and you don't know where to get your games from, what's the easiest way to actually get access to them? Can you run emulators, or do we download them from a website? Or?
Yeah, so my game specifically is available. I've got an itch page. It's mcgeezer.itch.io. All my games are on there. Yes, you can. So the Amiga games, you can run them in emulation. So the best emulator to run it, my games on is WinUAE. It's constantly developed, but they should run on FSUAE. Although I'll have a bit of a nightmare. So yeah, you know, there's some really good, couple of good Amiga emulators. I'll run my games no problem. And if you want a boxed edition of the game, you can go to geezergames.co.uk and you can get limited boxed run editions of the game.
That's an excellent question, because there's a lot of people that like this kind of thing that don't have a Dreamcast, and they're becoming harder to get hold of with working disk drives as well, so that's a really important factor. Everything that we put out works perfectly in ReDream, ReDream emulator, so that's what I would personally recommend. Always best on original hardware if you can, but yeah, they work wonderful.
Yeah, emulators, the NES games Meta is the best emulator at the moment, as far as we know. And it supports like all the new mappers as well. And where else? You can get Tapeworm basically everywhere as well. It's on Xbox, PlayStation. Parasite Pack is like a flea and Tapeworm together for £6 on all modern systems. And if you buy the PlayStation one, you get a cross-buy PS4, PS5, and they both got a Platinum Trophy. So there you go, and you can get the Platinum in 15 minutes if you know what you're doing.
Yeah, we've got our own shop actually where you can buy all of our products with pretty quick shipping actually via ship request. And yeah, they're also on Switch and PlayStation, Xbox, etc. But yeah, you can also torrent the ROM if you have to, or buy a cheap Chinese knockoff. There's plenty of those around now, which is a bit annoying, but yeah, we're trying to hit as many platforms as we can. Actually, Nintendo Crisis is coming to Nintendo 64 and PlayStation 1 next as well, so it should open up the game to a few more people, hopefully.
We think you're at like, what, 16 or 17 platforms by the
catch
time those guys
up,
are
yeah.
I probably should mention where you can get our games from. We're just as a reminder, we're called Wave Game Studios. So our website is wavegamestudios.com. We're also on all the social medias. However, we do make a very, very conscious effort to make sure that our games are available in as many independent retro game retailers as possible. We're in around about 60 at the moment, which is approximately half. There's one very near here. I can't remember the name right now, unfortunately. Hard to keep 120 retailers in your head. But yeah, most independents will either stock us or know about us and get our stuff.
I think we've got time for 2 more questions. Mr. Beat on the retro tips, Squire.
Obviously, like the old systems, limited hardware, and your small teams. But do you find just because they're new games that people have unrealistic expectations of these games?
Absolutely. the amount of times we've had people at conventions saying, this game's great, but it'd be really great if there was an on-screen map, and it's just not possible with the hardware. The other thing is because they're being made by one person, 2 people, maybe 3. I think 3 is the largest team that we've worked with. It's unrealistic to expect certain features to be in these games, unfortunately. It's just a matter of time.
Yeah, like feature creep is a real thing. Like you've got all these ideas of what you want to go in the game, and they don't get in with either whether it's limitations of the hardware or time, and time is the main thing. But you save that for the sequel. That's what happened back in the day as well. But yeah, more so on the newer systems, you get it when they're like, oh, this looks crap, like an S game running on the Dreamcast. They're like, but why does it look like an S game? Because it is. And sometimes explaining that to people, they just don't get it.
I think the new generation coming through probably don't appreciate pixel art quite as much as we do. So you get the odd comment here and there, and the odd annoying Steam review. But yeah, to be honest, they're not really our audience. You know, our audience are probably in the 30s, 40s, 50s now, and we try to cater for the young audience, and especially with difficulty. You know, I've found that. We've been making our games way too difficult. We've had a lot of criticism about that. So we're having to cater for the sort of more younger, or more casual gamer with different difficulty modes. Final Vendetta's got a casual difficulty setting, which that hurt me to put in there, but had to be done. So you have to make some sacrifices for the modern audience, I guess.
Just cheap with emulators, otherwise.
Can we get one last question, please?
Which game for your chosen platform would you love to see a port of or a version of?
Well, that's a good question. Can I think about that and pass it along?
Which game for our chosen platform, in my case Dreamcast, would we like to see, like
A version of?
a new version of, or? Wow. I'd like to see a new Virtua Cop. I know that's a bit of a niche choice these days, but that was one of my favourites. I'll go with that.
I can't think of one for the NES, but I want a new good Prince of Persia game. Because Prince of Persia on PS2, the Sands of Time was amazing. The way it told the story and stuff, like you die and it explains it. It says, no, that's not how it happened. Along with just the time bending mechanics that I'd never seen in a game before. The remake looks crap, but a new game in that franchise would be great.
I discovered King's Bounty during lockdown, weirdly, thanks to SNES Drunk, I think it was. So me and my daughter played that to death, and I'd love to see a new version of that on anything really. Yeah, I know there are more modern versions, but something more in the ilk of the Mega Drive version. That was a lot of fun. It was the last game we really got into, I think.
I'd love to see Hotline Miami to the Amiga. Just an absolutely amazing game, that. And from an arcade port perspective, I used to play loads with Hypersports, and I'll probably have a game of that out in the Expo.
Well, sadly, time is our enemy. I think we could sit here for hours and talk to these fantastic guys. So I just want you all to put your hands together and give it up for these four lads. We've got a guy coming along to talk about a game called Doom, which largely went unknown to our. Thank you very much. Cheers.